this video is going to take you through how to create a Microsoft form to support with recording observations and conversations with students. So I've already gone through the first few steps. I've gone into my Microsoft account. I've gone into my OneDrive and started a new form for Excel. So it's really important that you go in through your OneDrive and select Forms for Excel, because what that will mean is that this form will create a live version of an Excel spreadsheet that I can use in my OneDrive. And I'll explain kind of why that's important as we go through, but it actually, it's pretty new. I think that's been only available this year, but it actually really helps with recording data and not losing your data. So I've given it a name. So I've named it for my course, the semester, the period, and maybe the strand that I'm looking at. So for this one, it's problem solving. So first thing I want to do is I'm going to click on Add New, and I'm going to add all of my students to this form. So it's a little bit of work up front, but it's going to save you a lot of time in the long run, and it's going to make your data a whole lot cleaner. When you go to Excel, it's going to make sorting a lot easier. So I'm going to click Choice, and I'm going to add in my students. So I'm just going to add in a few here. I'm going to give myself a 5. Okay. So you can add as many students as you want. And then before I finish here, I'm going to click on these 3 dots, and I'm going to change this to drop down. It's just going to make it a little cleaner, a little easier to use later on. So I'm going to choose drop down, and I'm going to put students right here as my title. So that's the first thing I'm going to ask myself is, who am I talking to? Which students? All right. And then now I'm going to click on Add New. So what I'm going to add now is I'm going to add the prompt or the conversation piece I'm going to be having with my students. So for example, I've been using Brightspace to connect with my students while we're learning from home, but not all my students have access to a computer. So I'm going to be calling some of them. I'm going to be having conversations with some of them instead of relying on them to post in the discussion area. So I've already done my discussion post. I know which students will be accessing and responding there, and I know which students will not be able to. So I'm going to click on rating. And here where it says question, I'm going to put my prompt. So the discussion post, the prompt that I put in the discussion area, I'm going to type that right here. And then the first thing I'm going to do when I'm just having that conversation with my students is I'm going to level it. So level the conversation, level their understanding. And I'm going to choose 4. So level 1, 2, 3, 4. You can use the stars. I tend to like numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. That's very clear for me later what I was thinking at the time. So I've got my prompt here. I've got my quick way to level it. And then the next thing I want to do is I want to add, as I'm talking with them, as I'm having a conversation with them, I'm going to be taking notes. I'm going to be recording my observations, my thinking. So I'm going to click text. And these are just going to be my anecdotal notes from that conversation I had with a student. I'm going to click off long answers. So there's tons of room for me to type. There's no minimum on how much you need to type. So I always just click off long answer, just so I always know I have enough room. So that is quickly a quick form that I made prior to having a conversation with my students. So I have my students' names here. All their names are there. I have that prompt. I can give them a quick level, and I can also take notes. The nice thing is when I'm filling out this form, I can do either of these first. I don't have to go in order. So I can take my notes first, then I can give my level, or vice versa. It doesn't matter. So now that my form has been created, what I need to do is now I want to use the form. So just like you would share out a form with individuals that you're collecting data on, say you're surveying your students or your colleagues, you go to share. And I'm going to make sure only people in my organization can respond. That way it will record the email address and the identity of the person completing the form. Most likely it's just going to be me, but in the future, if you're ever using this in your classroom or you're collaborating with another teacher and you want to share your results, or they are also having conversations with students and observing learning, they can record in here as well, and you will see who made those observations. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to copy this link, and I'm going to use the link myself. So I'm going to open up a new tab. I'm going to paste that link in. And you're going to see it looks just like a form you would receive from anybody. So it's there for me to fill out now. To make this really easy on myself, I'm going to bookmark it. I'm going to bookmark this tab so it's quick and easy for me to access when I'm calling up my students, having those conversations. And I'm just going to bookmark it the exact same so I can find it quickly. So now that's done. It's easy for me to find. And then, so now I'm going to call up my students. I'm going to have those conversations with them based on that prompt. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select who I'm talking to. So first I'm going to be talking to Jenna. During our conversation, I'm going to take notes. And then I'm going to give Jenna a level based on our conversation. So right now, I think from what I'm hearing from Jenna, the conversations we're having, we're sitting at around a level 3. So I've got her name, I've got the level, I've got the prompt, so I know kind of what I'm looking for, what conversation I want to be having with Jenna right now, and then some notes on that conversation. And then I'm going to click submit. That's it. So I can go to submit another response. I'm going to call up Marianne now, have the same conversation with Marianne. Same thing, I'm going to take some notes. And Marianne is working at about a level 2 right now. So there's room for improvement. So I'm going to take my notes on that so I can come back to that later. Maybe the next time I call Marianne, we can have another conversation about this. And then I'm going to click submit. You can continue going through. So I'm just going to do a few more. Charlene's doing pretty good, about a level 3. My notes, I can come back to later, submit. And I'm going to do one more. So now I'm going to call up Mike. Mike's doing fantastic. We have great conversation. Mike's really demonstrating really strong understanding of this concept. So level 4. My notes on Mike. And then submit. Okay, so then I can come back to this form anytime because I bookmarked it. And whenever I come back, it'll land me right in this spot here. So another thing though, so this is pretty short, student prompt notes. You can do a separate form for every prompt, or you can just add on to this one as well. So I can always go back to that page where I was editing. Here it is here. And I can add new, and I can add another prompt, another note section. The nice thing is I don't have to fill in each part of this form every time. So as long as I don't click off this required slider, then I can kind of jump around and complete any part of this form at any time, which is nice. So now that I have those responses, you'll see they haven't quite loaded here yet. I just need to click refresh. So I'm back on my editing page now. And there you'll see I have 4 responses. Those were the 4 I just did. When I click on this, I can see who I've talked to. So I've talked to Jenna, Marianne, Charlene, and Mike once, and I've yet to talk to Dave. So that's a quick little way for me to see how many conversations, how many prompts I've gone through with my students. But the real powerful piece to this is this open in Excel feature. So you'll notice there's the little, let me go back to that. There's the little cloud there. What that means is this is opening a live Excel document. So previous, if you've used forms in the past, you always opened a new Excel based on your data here. So that was fine. But what we've noticed now, so if I go back into my questions and I'm like, oh, you know what? I'm not going to ask this question again. So I want to get rid of it. In the past, had I gotten rid of it, it would have gotten rid of all of my data. Now, when you get rid of it, your data stays, which is nice. So it's a little easier. I don't know if any of you have had that experience where you've deleted data. So that's kind of nice now. So when I go in and I clicked here and I opened up my Excel document, opens up here, you'll notice it's Excel Online, which is fine. You can always download it if you want by opening in desktop, but I usually like to leave it online. So first thing here, the ID, not a really big deal. It's just how many times the form's been filled out. Start time here, so you'll get a timestamp as to when it was started and when it was completed, which is nice because then you'll know when you had that conversation with that student. It'll track who filled in the form, so every time it's going to be you. And then now, moving along, you can see the students. So I know here's my conversation with Jenna. Here's my conversation with Marianne. Here's my conversation with Charlene. So as your form becomes more filled out, you can actually start to sort, which is kind of nice. So, and you can filter as well. So I can filter out so then I can only see the conversations I've had with Charlene. And you can see just yours or see everyone's. I'm going to see everyone's. So it doesn't really matter. I'm the only one filling this out. So there is just my conversations with Charlene. And then I can at any time clear my filter. I'm just going to select all again. There we go. So there's my students and then my prompt. So the actual text of my prompt, so what I was looking at will be right here. And then my notes will be right next to it, which is nice. So I can also see the level I assigned to them and then my notes on that conversation that I had with my students. So that's a really nice, kind of quick and easy way to go through and see your form and see your recordings of your observations and your conversations with your students, and a quick and easy way to kind of go back and look at when you had those conversations, what you were thinking, and, you know, moving forward with your students, how can they improve? This will kind of help you see quickly, looking at the levels, maybe some areas that they need to work with. And you can get a lot more elaborate with your forms as well. This is just a very basic one. You can really include anything you want in here, as you kind of go through and start to notice what some things work for you and don't work for you. But this is just the very basics to getting started. So that in a nutshell is how to use forms to track your observations and your conversations with students.